October again, which means we're returning for some spooky discussion for the month. We'll begin by continuing our review of the Friday the 13th series with the third installment, Friday the 13th, Part 3. After the breakout success of two back-to-back films with both installments making significant profit, a third entry was all but guaranteed. Instead of switching killers for this entry, the filmmakers decided to keep Jason Voorhees, but elected to change up some of his aesthetics. Despite the second film's success, it did make less money than its predecessor, so the filmmakers had to do something to spice up the series. The solution presented itself with the newly reinvigorated 3D technology, allowing the slasher to enact his violent rampage against an entirely new group of victims in 3 dimensions. I'm going to be upfront from the start here. This movie is not good. However, it has legitimate reasons to not be very good, which we can discuss in the wrap-up at the end of the video. Despite its overall poor quality, the film is still important for a few reasons that maintain its position in the echelons of horror history. Let's discuss it. The film picks up at the end of Part 2 with a truncated reshowing of Jason's final pursuit of Jenny. The heroine runs into Jason's shack, discovers Pamela's severed head, and decides to put her child psychology education to good use. She attempts to manipulate Jason by pretending to be his mother, and it would have worked if not for an ill-timed shift of Jenny's weight. Jason attempts to kill her, but is stopped by Paul. The two tussle before Jenny delivers the killing blow. They leave Jason's body behind, showing us that the jump scare at the end of Part 2 was there just for our benefit. Unbeknownst to them, the killer has survived his injury and crawls away. From here, we are treated to the greatest opening to a Friday the 13th movie all the way to this day, accompanied by one of the most 80s theme songs ever made. While the movie is remembered as one of the worst, this opening music is nearly universally loved by the fan base. As I said, it is unabashedly 80s, and is still, to this day, a popular song in nightclubs. It has this funky sound that builds a spooky atmosphere accompanied by the unmistakable elements of the Friday the 13th theme. It's easily the best part of the movie. The original plan for the movie was for it to be an even more direct sequel to Part 2, with Jason following Jenny to a psychiatric hospital where she was confined for observation after her ordeal. Jason would make his way through the hospital, killing staff and patients, looking for the one that got away, an idea that eventually was used for part of the next installment. Another possible idea was to have Jason follow Jenny back to her college and have another small-time jump like that of the one that occurred between the first and second movie. Those ideas were abandoned when Amy Still elected to pass on the sequel for other projects, leaving her as one of the few lasting survivors of the series. In lieu of getting Steele back, the writers turned to a new group of kids. After sneaking away from his shack, Jason retreats to a lakeside general store where he finds some new clothes, abandoning his hillbilly look for one more in line with the stereotypical Jason look. After getting his new clothes, he kills the store owner and his shrewish wife with some nice toward-the-camera kills, which gives us an early look at just how bad the 3D effects are going to be. From there, we cut to a friendly neighborhood where we're introduced to our protagonists for the movie. Chris Higgins, Debbie, who happens to be pregnant, her boyfriend Andy, Chuck, and Chili, an obnoxious prankster Shelley, and his disappointed blind date Vera. The entire group is going out to Chris's family lake house on Crystal Lake, which seems to exist somewhere else on the lake separate from Camp Crystal Lake. As we move through the franchise, we'll find that Crystal Lake has to be absolutely massive to accommodate the camps, all the lake houses present on it, and an outlet to the Atlantic Ocean. They pass by the general store where Jason killed the owner and his wife, showing us that this is the next morning, Saturday the 14th, which doesn't quite have the same ring to it. They arrive at the house, called Higgins Haven, and we get our first look at the primary setting of the film. The cabin was built completely by the crew just for the movie, and the lake was more of a holding pond depicted as a lake with fancy camera angles and darkened backgrounds. Unfortunately, the cabin burned down years ago, depriving the fandom of a fun tourist attraction to visit. After getting to the cabin, the group goes their separate ways to drop off their stuff. During this brief period of separation, we get a good sense of the kind of pranks that Shelley likes to play on others when he pretends to be a corpse. Once the trick is revealed, his friends are understandably angry with him. Vera, wanting a break, goes to the nearby general store. Shelley, realizing that he too should get away for a while, tags along. At the general store, we are introduced to the final three characters for our ensemble: bikers Ollie, Fox, and Loco. When the bikers attempt to intimidate Shelley and Vera, The two escape and trash the bikers' bikes in the process. Vera tells Shelley that she likes him when he's being himself and not trying to entertain with his pranks. Unbeknownst to Vera and Shelley, the bikers are able to track them back to Higgins Haven. They sneak around the property for a while, siphoning gas out of the party's van and investigating the barn attached to the property. After swinging on the rope in the barn, Fox ends up running into Jason and gets a pitchfork to the neck. She is discovered by Loco just in time to get a pitchfork to the gut. Ali goes into the barn to find his fellow gang members and is attacked by Jason. Later that evening, Chris and Rick go into the woods to get some alone time, and we are given some backstory for Chris. She explains that 2 years prior she was attacked by a hideous man. We are shown this attack through a foggy flashback scene, giving us a glimpse of his appearance while keeping the big reveal for later. During the attack, she did her best to get away, but ultimately blacked out, leaving the ultimate end of the attack on her as a mystery. Chris fled Crystal Lake after the attack, but has now returned to face her fear. This backstory causes one of the many continuity conflicts in the series, such as Jason's later behavior depictions and his clothing. Jason is depicted as a cold-blooded killer with near obsessive singular focus, and possible sexual assault is not part of that. Back in the cabin, Shelley makes his move on Vera and is shot down. She likes him, but only as a friend. She leaves Shelley to sulk and goes out to the lake. While she's sitting on the pier, she is suddenly attacked from the water by a hockey-masked fiend. I know what you're thinking, but this is not Jason. It's Shelley again, attempting to pull another prank. Vera scolds him for his pranks, telling him that he's a good guy when he acts like himself, but the pranks detract from that. Shelley hears something and goes into the barn. A while later, Vera sees a wallet floating in the lake and goes to get it. As she turns around, she sees a figure wearing the hockey mask step out onto the pier. She assumes it's still Shelley playing another prank, but she is sorely mistaken. This is Jason, now wearing the mask that will become famous. He fires a harpoon at her, piercing her eye and killing her, before turning and sauntering off about as nonchalantly as possible. Inside, Debbie and Andy have just finished their private alone time in a hammock, and Debbie goes off to take a shower. While she's showering, she is surprised by the sudden appearance of a handstanding Andy. He leaves the bathroom and handstand walks down the hall, but is surprised by Jason, who brings a machete down on him hard, cutting him in half. After her shower, Debbie crawls back into the hammock only to find Andy's body and gets herself killed, in an homage to the Kevin Bacon kill from the first Friday the 13th. Downstairs, stoner couple Chuck and Chili are making popcorn when the power goes out. Chuck heads down to the basement to check out the problem, while Chili searches the bedroom. She finds Shelley's body and runs. In the basement, Chuck runs into Jason and is hurled into the fuse box and killed. Upstairs, Chili is running through the house yelling about Shelley being dead and is met by Jason. She is killed by a hot poker. On the way back to the cabin, Rick's car breaks down, forcing Chris and him to walk back. They find the cabin in disarray. Rick steps outside and is immediately grabbed by Jason, who crushes his skull, causing his eye to shoot out towards the camera. Jason attacks Chris, who fights back and escapes the house. She gets in the van and leaves, only to run out of gas on a small bridge. Jason takes advantage and attacks her, but she is able to get away and flees to the barn. She surprises Jason and hits him over the head with a shovel. She ties a noose around his neck and tosses him from the barn, hanging him next to the entrance. She tries to sneak past him, but is shocked when he regains consciousness and lifts himself up from the noose. This forces his mask over his face, revealing a horribly deformed face and confirming that he is the man that attacked her 2 years prior. He comes after her, but is distracted by the sudden reappearance of Ali. Jason makes short work of him, but the distraction gives Chris the opportunity to drive an axe into Jason's head. This axe blow damages the mask, leaving a spot that remains in every subsequent film until the mask is destroyed. She leaves and follows Alice's lead from the first movie, climbing into a canoe and going out onto the lake. The next morning, she awakens to a pristine setting, but is terrified to see the demented face of Jason, looking absolutely delighted to see Chris. She panics and tries to flee as Jason bursts through the door and rushes toward her. She continues to try to navigate the canoe to safety, only to find that Jason is no longer there. She had imagined the whole thing. She heaves a big sigh of relief, only to have the rotting body of Mrs. Voorhees, head still in place, jump out of the water and pull her underneath. We jump suddenly to a scene of a clearly disturbed Chris being escorted to a police car. The car drives away as Chris begins to scream. We end on a lingering shot of Jason's lifeless body, axe still embedded in his head. His rampage of terror is ended. Or is it? As I stated at the beginning of this video, this movie is not good. The script is unimaginative and is essentially a fancy retread of the two movies that came before it, copying a lot of imagery and story beats of the previous entries. The 3D effects, while revolutionary in the 80s, caused the cast and crew constant headaches that clearly translated to the final product. Large parts of the movie seem to only exist because of the 3D portions and don't make a ton of sense outside of that paradigm, which makes watching the movie today without the benefit of 3D an interesting experience. Another problem caused by the use of 3D is the changes to the atmosphere. To get the cameras to work effectively, the lighting on the set had to be very bright, making the movie very bright and affecting the mood of the movie. This movie is just too well lit to be anything approaching scary. However, the movie still deserves some accolades. For one, it's the second film in the franchise to give us a well-developed protagonist. Chris has a past affiliation with Jason and has returned to Crystal Lake to face her fears. She is resourceful and manages to fight back against the killer. She, much like Jenny, isn't just the pretty one that survives until the end. The 3D technology, while problematic and ultimately the downfall of the movie, is a bold decision to keep the franchise fresh. And finally, this film gave us the classic Jason look with the nondescript jumpsuit look and the famous hockey mask. This film has a lot of problems, but its place in the Horror Movie Hall of Fame is safe and secure due to what it brought us in the genre. Friday the 13th Part 3 was a box office success, breaking the opening weekend record held by its successor, Friday the 13th, and surpassing the results of the previous entry. Despite this, however, Paramount was ashamed of its horror film franchise and decided to end it in the next installment, which we will discuss next time. As far as my ordering of the films thus far, this film is well below Part 2, but I do think it's better than Part 1, but just barely. It has a better overall plot, more developed characters, and above all, that opening theme song. This film introduced us to one of the most well-known masks in horror. Which slasher do you think has the best look? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching.